The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Miguel Torres sat in the cold, sterile room of an ICE detention center. His hands were cuffed to a metal table bolted to the floor, and his heart pounded like a drum against his ribs. Across from him sat Agent Carter, a tall man with sharp features and an even sharper tone. He slid a file across the table toward Miguel, its edges worn from being handled too many times. Where in the world are you watching from? Let us know in the comments below. We love hearing from our global community. And if you found this story eye-opening, don't forget to subscribe for more thought-provoking content. Miguel Torres, Agent Carter began, his voice low but cutting through the silence like a knife. You've been flagged as part of El Tren de Aragua, one of the most dangerous Venezuelan gangs operating on U.S. soil. Miguel's eyes widened, disbelief etched onto his face. What? That's insane. I'm not part of any gang. I'm just a mechanic trying to provide for my family. Agent Carter leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms over his chest. That's what they all say at first. But we have evidence linking you to gang activity. You've been seen associating with known members, and your phone records show suspicious communications. This was it, the moment that would change everything. Miguel knew how this worked. He'd heard stories about ICE raids targeting Latinos under flimsy pretexts. Deportations had skyrocketed recently, fueled by policies aimed at cracking down on illegal immigration and gang violence. Words like gang affiliation, criminal aliens, and public safety threat echoed in news headlines daily. But Miguel wasn't undocumented. He had legal residency. And yet, here he was, accused of something he didn't do. As the gravity of the situation sank in, Miguel felt panic rising in his throat. If he couldn't prove his innocence, he could be deported back to Venezuela, a country he hadn't set foot in since he was 5 years old. Why would ICE target someone who isn't undocumented or involved in crime? What happens when bureaucracy overrides justice? Stay tuned as Miguel fights to clear his name while navigating a system designed to assume guilt before innocence. Growing up in Miami, Miguel had always strived to live the American dream. His parents had fled Venezuela during Hugo Chávez's regime, seeking refuge and opportunity in the United States. They worked tirelessly, his father as a construction worker and his mother cleaning offices, to give their children a better life. For Miguel, that meant working hard, staying out of trouble, and building a future for himself and his younger sister, Sophia. But now, sitting in that interrogation room, Miguel realized how fragile that dream really was. The accusation against him wasn't just about mistaken identity. It was part of a larger narrative sweeping across the nation. Anti-immigrant rhetoric had reached fever pitch, with terms like mass deportations, zero tolerance, and border security dominating political discourse. Agent Carter opened the folder again, pulling out grainy photos of Miguel standing near a group of men outside a local bodega. Care to explain these? Miguel squinted at the images. Those are friends from my neighborhood. We hang out sometimes after work. None of them are in gangs. Carter raised an eyebrow. Your friends include Carlos Mendoza, wanted for human trafficking charges in 3 states. Another is Luis Alvarado, suspected of smuggling weapons across state lines. Still think you're innocent? Miguel's stomach churned. He barely knew those guys. They weren't close friends, just acquaintances he occasionally chatted with. How could mere proximity condemn him? Desperation clawed at him. Look, I don't know anything about those people beyond small talk. I swear, I'm not involved in anything illegal." Carter sighed, flipping through more documents. "We also found encrypted messages on your phone discussing shipments and routes. Care to explain that?" Miguel froze. Someone must have hacked his phone, or worse, framed him. Who would want to destroy his life like this? Who benefits from framing Miguel? Could it be connected to recent reports of IC collaborating with informants to meet deportation quotas? Keep watching as Miguel uncovers shocking truths about corruption within the system. Back in his cell, Miguel replayed the events leading up to his arrest. It started 2 weeks ago when a customer at the auto shop where he worked complained about a noise in their car. Miguel remembered noticing something odd, a USB drive hidden under the passenger seat. Thinking nothing of it, he handed it to the owner without giving it much thought. Now he wondered if that seemingly insignificant act had sealed his fate. Was the USB drive evidence of criminal activity? Had someone planted it there to implicate him? Determined to fight back, Miguel requested access to a lawyer. Thankfully, his boss, Mr. Reynolds, agreed to help cover legal fees. Enter Rachel Kim, a fiery immigration attorney known for taking on high-profile cases involving wrongful deportations. Rachel arrived at the detention center, armed with files, notes, and a no-nonsense attitude. "Listen, Miguel," she said firmly, after hearing his story. "ICE has broad authority, but they can't just accuse people without solid proof. We'll challenge their claims and expose inconsistencies in their case." She explained that recent changes in immigration policy allowed ICE officers significant leeway in determining who posed a threat. Terms like expedited removal and mandatory detention had become tools used to justify detaining individuals without due process. For Miguel, time was running out. If Rachel couldn't gather enough evidence to refute the allegations, he risked being deported and losing everything he held dear. Will Rachel uncover the truth behind the mysterious USB drive? Can Miguel prove his innocence before it's too late? Find out as tensions rise and secrets unravel in the next chapter of this gripping story. Rachel wasted no time diving into the case. She requested access to all evidence ICE had against Miguel, including the encrypted messages and the photos of his alleged gang affiliations. But her instincts told her the key to unraveling this mess lay in that mysterious USB drive. Through a series of motions filed with the court, Rachel managed to secure temporary possession of the device. Back at her office, she plugged it into her computer, expecting to find incriminating files or communications. Instead, what she discovered sent chills down her spine. The USB contained detailed blueprints of several federal buildings in Miami, along with timestamps and notes written in Spanish. One document mentioned La Operación Escudo, which roughly translated to Operation Shield. Another file listed names, some familiar, others not, including Miguel's. Rachel immediately called Miguel. "Did you recognize any of these names?" she asked, showing him a printed copy during their next meeting. Miguel shook his head. "No, I've never seen most of them. But wait." He pointed to one name near the bottom of the list. Carlos Mendoza. "That's one of the guys ICE accused me of hanging out with. What does this mean?" "It means someone is using your identity, or trying to frame you, for something much bigger than a gang affiliation," Rachel said grimly. "This isn't just about deporting undocumented immigrants anymore. Whoever planted this USB wanted you implicated in something dangerous. Who is behind Operation Shield? And why would they target Miguel, an ordinary mechanic with no criminal record? Keep watching as Rachel and Miguel dig deeper into a conspiracy that goes far beyond immigration enforcement. As Rachel investigated further, she uncovered disturbing patterns linking recent deportations to high-profile corruption cases. Reports indicated that ICE had been collaborating with local informants, some of whom were former gang members seeking leniency, to identify targets for deportation. These informants often provided questionable intel, leading to wrongful arrests under the guise of national security. One name kept popping up in Rachel's research: Victor Salazar, a Venezuelan-born informant with ties to both U.S. law enforcement and international crime syndicates. According to leaked documents, Salazar had helped ICE build cases against dozens of Latino men, many of whom were later deported without proper trials. Rachel decided to confront Salazar directly. Posing as a journalist interested in writing about successful anti-gang operations, she arranged a meeting at a dimly lit cafe downtown. Salazar arrived dressed in a sharp suit, exuding confidence. When Rachel brought up Miguel's case, his demeanor shifted slightly. "Miguel Torres? Yeah, I heard about him," Salazar said casually, sipping his coffee. "He fits the profile. Venezuelan descent, connections to known criminals, suspicious activity on his phone." "Why are you asking?" Rachel pressed harder. "What if I told you there's evidence suggesting he was set up, that someone used his identity to cover their tracks?" Salazar smirked, but didn't answer. Instead, he leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Let me give you some advice, miss. Some battles aren't worth fighting, especially when the system has already decided who the enemy is." His words sent a clear message: back off or face consequences. Why is Victor Salazar so eager to protect the status quo? Does he know more about Operation Shield than he's letting on? Stay tuned as Rachel uncovers shocking truths that could put her own life in danger. Determined to expose Salazar's role in the conspiracy, Rachel dug deeper into his background. She discovered that he had once been a mid-level operative in Tren de Aragua, the same gang ICE accused Miguel of joining. After cutting a deal with authorities, Salazar became an informant, feeding ICE information in exchange for immunity and financial incentives. But Rachel found something even more alarming. Salazar had recently purchased property in Venezuela through shell companies linked to drug cartels. It seemed he was playing both sides, profiting from chaos while maintaining plausible deniability. Armed with this new evidence, Rachel prepared to take her findings public. However, before she could act, ICE agents showed up at her office, demanding access to her case files. They claimed they were conducting an internal review, but Rachel knew better. They were trying to silence her. Meanwhile, Miguel remained trapped in detention, unaware of the storm brewing outside. Each day felt like an eternity as he waited anxiously for news from Rachel. Would she be able to save him before it was too late? Can Rachel expose Salazar's double-crossing before ICE buries the truth? Will Miguel ever see his family again? Find out as the stakes reach a boiling point in the thrilling conclusion of this story. Rachel knew she was running out of time. ICE's sudden interest in her case files confirmed her worst fears. They were on to her investigation. If she didn't act quickly, all the evidence she had gathered would vanish into bureaucratic black holes, leaving Miguel stranded in a system rigged against him. She decided to leak everything to a trusted journalist at the Miami Herald, someone known for exposing corruption within government agencies. Together, they crafted an explosive exposé detailing Victor Salazar's dual role as an informant and cartel operative, along with the USB drive's connection to Operation Shield. But leaking the story came with risks. Rachel understood that going public could make her a target, not just from ICE, but from the powerful criminal networks Salazar worked with. Still, she couldn't stand by while innocent lives were destroyed. As the article went live online, chaos erupted. Headlines screamed about ICE informant ties to Venezuelan cartels and deportation quotas masking criminal conspiracies. Social media lit up with outrage, and lawmakers demanded answers. Within hours, federal agents raided Salazar's properties, seizing documents and freezing his assets. For the first time, Rachel allowed herself a moment of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this nightmare was coming to an end. With Salazar under investigation, will ICE drop their case against Miguel? Or is it too late to undo the damage already done? Keep watching as the final pieces of the puzzle fall into place. Despite the mounting pressure on ICE, Miguel remained locked away in detention. His name hadn't been cleared yet, and the wheels of justice turned painfully slow. Every day felt like a lifetime as he waited anxiously for news from Rachel. Finally, after weeks of legal battles and relentless advocacy, Rachel secured a court hearing to present her findings. Standing before the judge, she laid out the evidence piece by piece: the fabricated gang affiliations, the planted USB drive, Salazar's corrupt dealings, and the broader implications of Operation Shield. This isn't just about one man being wrongfully detained, Rachel argued passionately. It's about accountability. It's about ensuring that our immigration policies don't become tools for exploitation and abuse. On the other side, ICE's attorneys tried to downplay the allegations, claiming that Salazar's actions were isolated incidents and unrelated to Miguel's case. But the tide had shifted. Public opinion was firmly against them, and even some judges began questioning the agency's methods. After hours of deliberation, the judge ruled in Miguel's favor. Based on the evidence presented, she declared, there is insufficient cause to detain Mr. Torres any longer. He is free to go. Miguel walked out of the detention center into the warm Miami sun, greeted by his tearful family and friends. For the first time in months, he felt like himself again, a mechanic, a son, a brother, not a criminal or a pawn in someone else's game. Though Miguel was free, the scars of his ordeal lingered. His business suffered during his absence, and the emotional toll weighed heavily on him and his loved ones. Yet, amidst the pain, there was resilience. Inspired by Rachel's courage, Miguel joined local advocacy groups fighting for immigrant rights. He shared his story at rallies and town halls, urging lawmakers to reform broken systems that disproportionately targeted Latinos and other marginalized communities. Rachel continued her work as well, taking on more cases of wrongful deportations and exposing systemic injustices. Together, they became voices for change, determined to ensure no one else faced what Miguel endured. Victor Salazar, meanwhile, disappeared from the headlines after his arrest. Rumors swirled that he'd fled the country, seeking refuge in Venezuela, where extradition laws protected him. While justice may not have caught up to him entirely, his downfall served as a reminder that corruption rarely goes unpunished forever. What lessons can we learn from Miguel's story? How can we hold institutions accountable when they fail us? Reflect on these questions as we close this chapter, but remember the fight for justice never truly ends.